Well, to those that are attending tonight, welcome to you. We're waiting for everybody to get in, and we're waiting for the senator. I know he had some other obligations that are going on for tonight and got delayed for it a bit. He is apparently wrapping up on another meeting presently. I just got a message in from that. He'll be joining us fairly shortly. For those of you who haven't listened to our senator before, he can go a little bit long sometimes in his discussions on things. So I'm sure that he will be here in time. In the meantime, I think we've got some other background things to be taken care of, if you will, for us this evening. We'll call the meeting officially to order at this point. Since we are a Zoom protocol for all of you that are in attendance, please be aware that I think I mentioned to all of you before, we had some problems ages ago with being Zoom bombed, I guess they call it. We had some people that were flashing us and Nazi flags running around and what have you. So we changed the protocol over to the webinar format, which makes it a little bit difficult for us to be able to have an open discussion with all of the members that come in. But if you have questions as the evening goes on, use the Q&A button that's down below and see what we can do with that. That would be a good thing for us to do. We are going to be electing our board members this evening. What I'm going to be asking you to do after they have been announced to us is to raise your hand. And for those of you who can't find where the hand raiser is, if you go down to the bottom of the screen where it says more and there's like 3 little dots, there's a place there where you can raise your hand. And that's the way that we'll be able to know how your vote is going to go. If you will, after we take the first vote on those that approved, we'll ask you to bring your hands back down, and those then that would be unopposed to it, you raise your hands as well. We'll take it from there, but just to give you a heads up on how to be able to handle that situation. So just be aware that because of that past incident with Zoom, we've gone to a little bit more of a restricted methodology, if you will. And while I appreciate all of you being here tonight, this is kind of an unusual time for us. We usually a little bit later in the year, later in the month for our meetings, but because of holidays and people being out of town and what have we moved it up a bit. So it's got everybody by surprise, I know, and we appreciate all of you being here. I know that everybody's got more important things they would think to do, but by the same token, knowing what's going on in your community, I think is just as important, if maybe not more so sometimes. These things can be important for us to understand what's going on, to understand the things that are happening around us is important. So if you will, we'll get again started with the beginnings of this, and we'll start off, if you will, with Pledge of Allegiance. If you wouldn't mind, those who are able to stand, please hand over the heart and repeat. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate that. We are blessed with our bylaws telling us that has to open up every one of our meetings. So we'll continue to do so. So be aware of that. I don't care if anybody wants to jump up and down and yell and scream. We are not a public organization that, so we go by some different standards and what some other ones end up going by. So there we are. I want you to be aware that we need your help. We need your emails. If any of you that are listening tonight have not received our newsletter today or emails, that's because I don't have your email address. So go tiptoe over to our website, whho.com, and there's a place at the top for you to give us your emails. We will deeply, deeply appreciate that. And if you're not members, there's also a place there for you to join. It's inexpensive. It's $25 for the entire family for a year. There's a PayPal abilities to get onto the line there, and it makes it hopefully a little bit easier for all of you. And I think that would be a good thing for you to do. Why do we need that? Well, 2 things. One, our numbers become impressive to our elected officials. The more that we have that are listening to us, that are of the same mind as what we are, and the way that we approach things, the more they're going to listen. So you're helping us, but more importantly, you're helping yourselves by joining. So please do so. We feel that it's a minimal obligation at the $25 for the entire family. Please do that. PayPal makes it pretty easy to do it as well. And again, give us those emails. Presently, we're sending out our newsletter to all of our members and those that are interested, whether they're members or not. There may come a time that what we will do is send out only just kind of a synopsis of what that newsletter has, and the newsletter will only be available then to our paying members. The newsletter is composed by Marty Lipkin most of the time, and almost all the articles he has taken from suggestions from us and input that's come from the board members. His writing is excellent. You should read through that email, that newsletter. I think that you'll be impressed, as the rest of us are, with the information that's there. There's a lot that goes on in the city, believe it or not, a lot that goes on in our community, and it's really a major way for us to be able to understand what's going on. Brings us to, at the end of that, you'll find the list of our advertisers. Please support them. They help to offset some of the cost of the things we do, and doing the Zooms and the having all the electronic stuff set up and what have you does run into some monies too. So help support them. Let them know that you are a supporter of the homeowners organization, and support them because they are supporting us as well. They would deeply appreciate that also, and we would as well. Next month, January 26th, we expect to have Councilman Bob Bloomingfield here. We'll have a Zoom meeting for that one as well, same time at 7:30. We'll go through a lot of things that have happened in the city and what we can expect to have happen in the next year in the city. There's a lot of things that have been going on with the homelessness and some of those issues as well. So be aware of that and mark your calendars. February should be interesting. February 23rd, we expect to have the city controller, Ron Galprin, out. If you haven't listened to him before, he is fascinating to listen to how he ends up hammering the city on stuff. He finds a way of getting down into the nitty gritty on where the monies are being spent. I think right now we are all kind of interested in where the money is going to for the homelessness. Triple H funds have put a lot of money in the hands of our city officials to be able to handle this problem. Some have said that we would have been better off by taking those monies and going out and handing it out to those that are homeless and let them figure out what to do with it than they are trying to build some of these tiny homes, which are running a fortune. So I think we'll have a very interesting discussion with Mr. Galpin when we get into the February meeting. I think that's going to be quite interesting and quite appropriate for us to take on. Well, one of the housekeeping things we have to get through tonight is the election of officers. As you know, we have a membership, but we also have a board of directors, and we have officers of that board as well. Your organization is controlled is probably the wrong word, is executed by the board members. We, in trying to make sure that we have our ear to the ground on what you want and what things are appropriate. We, in the board meetings, which we have almost every month, we may miss a few of them depending upon the holidays, but those board meetings, we go through a number of subjects, figure out what's important right now that we have to spend our time on. Also finding what's going to be the best place to allocate our resources so that we don't end up spinning our wheels in areas and not accomplishing things. This organization has been around since 1985 and has done a great job on being able to accomplish a lot in a lot of areas. A lot of the things that the control in a lot of the building, some think there's not control on it, but you should see what it would be like otherwise. A lot of that has come about because of the work that this organization has done, along with the neighborhood council as well. I don't mean to take anything away from them as well in that process. So the board gets elected in December by a vote of the membership, and they take office officially at January the 1st. Bob Bloomingfield has traditionally sworn us in, but we begin on January the 1st with a new board and new officers, and they will all serve for 1 year's worth of time. So going to that formality at this point, I, as the chair, recognize that there are sufficient members for us to conduct that election. Our chairman of our election committee is Dennis DiBiase. Dennis, I'll turn it over to you. You are presently our vice president. If you would you go ahead and give us the slate of board members and of officers so that we can properly vote for them. Hey, sure. Nick, I see Nick Gaines has come in too, Nick.
Well, it's Henry, actually.
Oh, is that Henry? Oh, it is Henry. You've come in on Nick Gaines's name on it. Sorry about that, Henry. We are.
I'll do my best impersonation, John.
I got to tell you,
there you go.
With my glasses here, I didn't recognize you. My apologies.
I need a haircut. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Right now, if you would, Senator, we got the election of our officers. Dennis, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and read out the slate of officers at this point.
Sure thing. As the chair of the nominating committee, I'm pleased to announce that the existing members from last year are all willing to continue to serve.
Speak up for us, Dennis, too.
I'm sorry?
Speak up.
Oh, yeah. As President, John Walker. As Executive Vice Presidents, Dennis DiBiase, that's me, and Martin Lipkin. As Treasurer, Sylvia Anthony Murley. As Secretary, Nancy Porter. As Directors at Large, Ari Coyne, Armin Havanasian, Shelley Schwartz, Aaron Williams, and Bobby Wasserman. And by the way, I wanted to personally thank everyone for their past service and for their willingness to continue.
Very good. All of those that are in favor of that slate, if you would, to raise your hand. And again, at the bottom, you'll see that there is the triple dots, which says more. You can raise your hand there. All those in favor on that one, please raise your hand. We as the board members can also vote. So let's see a hand out of those board members as well. Very good. Okay, if you put your hands down, and those that have put them up, if you go ahead and mark your hands off. One more. Those that would be that are against that board members, would you raise your hand? As the chair, I find that the election is unanimous at that point, and all those officers will serve in their present positions and as board members and as officers. And the opinion of the chair, then that is approved. Well, thank you for that. We go on to the most important part of the night, which is our discussion with our senator. I think some of the background for, oh, you got your name up there now, right? Senator, good, I appreciate that. I think what we need to know about the senator, a couple of things. First of all, he's a sixth generation California living here in Los Angeles. He represents probably about almost 1 million people, I think, out of the 27th district. He was elected for the 27th district back in November of 2016. A former educator, environmental attorney, constitutional attorney, I consider him as well. He had his undergraduate degree out of Harvard University, his law degree out of UC Berkeley. We won't hold that against him. Bolt Hall is a great law school, but there's some of us that have issues with Bolt Hall, but nonetheless. Born in 1982, wife is Alexandria Stern. He's chaired the State National Resources and Water Committee since 2018. He's bolstered the state wildfire preservation issues and the preparedness, especially out of those things. Push for the state to address the climate change emergencies. He's also been appointed the chair of the state legislative committees on energy and management. He also sits on the Senate Budget, Environmental Quality, Judiciary, and Energy and Utilities and Communications Committees, on the Budget Subcommittee on Resources, Environmental and the Protections of Energies as well. I understand, Senator, that you have a focus on a couple of things you've been really kind of interested in up in Sacramento. Attacking the climate change issues, the wildfire preparedness, and improving our democracy generally, and assisting the vulnerable populations such as the homeless and what have you. Senator, welcome. Appreciate that you are here.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Hopefully we can make this more of a conversation than just me talking at y'all. So it's really you all, the new officers, or the old new officers, I guess. You've built a knowledge base here and a little advocacy engine that's been really, really important for creating a beachhead for sane politics out in the West San Fernando Valley. And I really appreciate what you all are doing, and showing up these meetings month after month and digging in. And yeah, I mean, we can talk about a few of those issues. I mean, homelessness.
Sounds good. Let's start off with the following, which is kind of what we teased everybody on a bit.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff went on in legislature this past year. Some of it good, some of it bad. The bad ones are the ones that are kind of stuck in our throats at this point. There probably are SB 9 and 10 on the building issues that are there. What happened? How come the Southern California group was not able to stop that going through? It seems that that all those items were not appropriate for the location. I know there was some that you abstained on. They just did not make sense. So what happened? What went on in the state legislature? What was let's talk about the bad first and how that ended up happening, and we'll talk about some of the good stuff too.
Well, I was the first time this happened, I was a a lonely army of one in the Senate. So it was 39 to me. The first time Weiner moved to SB 50, and then the pro tem moved her version of sort of fourplexing the state. And then this time around, we had a pretty decent first vote that didn't stop the bills in the Senate, but sent a little more of a shot across the bow that we needed to see changes. But yeah, I mean, look, there's two issues. There's housing and then there's affordable housing. And when you talk about housing as a solution to homelessness, but what you're really talking about is upzoning that's going to let people build either super high-end luxury apartment buildings or McMansions in our communities, none of that's going to solve the homelessness crisis. And so I parted company with a lot of my colleagues, and it's lonely. It was lonely work. It still is a bit lonely, and the weight of the building industry and that lobby in the assembly, I think, was really important. And Senator Weiner is also a very smart tactician in terms of how he managed that bill. And I think those of you who followed this closely, he created an option for SB 10. So it's still an option for the city to opt into that framework. And that was a clever design of the bill. What it's going to do to you and to us here in LA is force us to get really vigilant about our advocacy at the local level.
I think that's a major caution for all of us on that, Senator, that I know there's some potential legislation that probably the city council needs to be looking at to make sure that we're going to be protected from that going on. But you've worked with Weiner before too. I think you sat on some committees with him.
I did.
What's the story with him? He seems to be.
Well, I mean, ironically, one of the other issues I'm hoping we get into is homelessness and mental health reform, and some of the issues with getting some of our most gravely disabled people off the streets. I went through an effort to do a mental health reform bill with him, for instance, because San Francisco is such a mess. And on any given issue, he can be a really thoughtful legislator, but he's got that. If you can believe this, Scott Weiner is considered a moderate Democrat in San Francisco. Just get your head around that.
I could probably see that.
He's somehow like on the right end of the political spectrum. That just shows you the constituency that he works for and what they expect. I mean, I don't think it's disingenuous with him. I think it's genuine, but I think it's with a total lack of understanding of LA.
Well, there's also
I don't think anybody still has told me how LA is going to solve the affordability problem.
Well,
because I don't see any of these.
It seems to us that there's just not I'll call it a coalition, if you will, of the Southern California legislators, both in the Senate as well as
you're right.
So as a result, we get walked over, and I can't imagine that going on. That you guys don't sit down and start working out your strategies and start working.
We try.
What bills you want.
I took a crack at that and tried to build a coalition, but people get picked off. We're 39 members for the LA delegation. I mean, that's a very spanning from people down in El Monte and South LA and the gateway cities out to here, right? So such a diverse group, and you're right. It is a failure in coalition building. And it's also the weight of the person who's in charge of the entire body, right? When the president of the Senate wants something done and all your bills are in her house, there's huge power in that. De Leon, by the way, when he was president of the Senate, he's now running for mayor, but De Leon didn't use the Senate presidency that way. But when you have the leader doing it, it's not like, don't get distracted by, it's not all Weiner, right? He's sort of the one who stands out in our mind because 50 came out and he's very provocative, but there's a lot of other leverage they've got to break up coalitions like the one you're talking about, right?
Is your coalition just too large? You need to really have it smaller to where it's more manageable instead of having 30 some odd, maybe have 10 or somewhere.
Yeah, and I also think we've just got to, the hardest part is talking about the inequities, and we have to be the progressive ones. I know you got a mixed group here, and we got Republicans and Democrats and everybody in between. here, and that's my district, right? That's me, my culture too, right? But like the trend in California politics is to out progressive each other. So then as soon as this issue feels like they cast you as a NIMBY, or that you're not, excited about something equitable and progress, then you're scared to take a position like that. And so the frame on the whole issue, I think, got screwed up, because frankly, I think gentrification is inequitable, and you're going to end up driving, poor middle class people out of their neighborhoods. I don't think it's actually going to hit us as hard as it will South LA. I think that's really going to be tip of the spear. We'll get we'll have issues.
Well, what a shame. I mean, that's not the community it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be helping those communities, not harming them. And that's what that bill is going to probably end up doing in that process. Talk to me about some of the successes. What went on up in Sacramento that was good, that you were proud of, either in coalition. There may not be much, but
yeah, I'm searching. Look, it was a big budget year, and I was happy we paid down our debts and started bringing down the pension debts and doing pretty good fiscal work, I'd say. So I think our books are pretty strong, and I like some of the accountability measures we got in place. I ran an audit of LA County's homelessness program, for instance, and we found $1 billion in mental health services money sitting there, piling up and not being utilized. And so we got that audit.
That's the county is supposed to be delving that out. Is that correct, or is that just were those?
Oh yeah. It is the county, and that story and that audit shook them up. So they've now spent about half of that down. The whole fundamental impasse there is that, and it's especially with the current supervisor in this area, I think Barger out in the North Valley is much more open to reforms, but Kuehl has been really dug in on this issue that we're only building the permanent supportive housing, leave services and the temporary to second tier, right? So you hear this phrase like housing first, right?
They're putting housing ahead of the mental issues then.
Well, or they're not putting them, like, they're trying to put one in ahead of the other. And the fact is they go together, right? I mean, that's the thing, is like, what we're saying isn't build only cabin communities or only build temporary shelter beds. It's just that, like, it's going to take a second to build a major piece of permanent supportive housing. In the near term, let's get people some treatment. And
is there something the state can do to be able to give I'll say some direction, if you will, to the counties to start doing that?
Yeah,
and has the state done that?
That's one of the few successes, is that we got some strings attached now to LA County's homelessness and housing funding, because there's definitely dollars flowing from the state down here. I mean, we did like $10.3 billion for affordable housing. I mean, wow. The numbers sound mind blowing. Granted, you spread that out over a whole state or even all of LA, it goes fast with the cost of the projects, the way they're coming in right now. But we've got some strings attached.
What are those strings? Can you tell us?
So we didn't give them all the money at once. We only gave the LA an initial chunk, and they have to come back to us with new data about how many people they're getting off the streets, how many board and care facilities are available, some sort of data to show that they're focused on, outcomes and not just like mega projects for housing. So
is that a yearly request?
In theory, this budget, we could leverage them a bit.
Is that going to be a yearly request for them to get a budget that get those monies, or what's it going to?
It's a 3-year appropriation. Okay. So we got and if they want the remaining 3/4 of the money, they got to hit metrics by May, and then kind of keep coming back. And the governor, frankly, has been good on this one. Like, he's been a little bit tough on local government, and they don't like it very much, right? Because one of the things he proposed was to cut them out of the puzzle entirely and just work with direct service providers. It ended up as more saber rattling. That didn't happen. It's too hard to administer something statewide. And I frankly, we got to just make the competence of county and city work. It's going to be too hard to administer this from the state. But
are you doing anything with the city? Is the state doing anything with the city?
To raise taxes,
Is there anything with the city at all? The same type of restrictions?
Same deal. They're under the same deal. Okay. They want access to the state pot. They got to show us what they're doing. Show us their count. Show us where the count is next. Do a little better job of the count. We could talk about the count, but I think it's been an undercount. I think we're short like 40,000 or so. I think people are Yeah.
Are you satisfied with what's going on both with the county and with the city towards that uh, fulfillment of that obligation to put up some housing and take care of the mental?
No, not yet. There's some stuff that I'm very frustrated with, frankly, and there's some members on the city council who I've been working with, and especially with the soups, we've been trying to get those mental health dollars flowing, and Barger and I have been trying to get a change in. I don't know how deep in the weeds you guys want to get, but this definition of what they call grave disability, what allows people. Right now, you have to be basically a threat to yourself or others, but they don't take into account your mental health or any drug addiction issues or
That's the
repeat
5150
incarceration.
hold type of stuff. The 5150 hold is basically that: harm to yourself, harm to others, and as a result, you can't do anything. The people you can't touch them. And
so you can refuse care even at your own peril. This is the tragedy, right? It's like, I get that we don't feel safe in our communities, but that's not actually the ultimate tragedy. Is that people are dying who really, really need our help. And they're on the streets, and like, we're letting them die because we're so worried about Boise v. like the, constitutional law decisions and the ACLU on this stuff. And anyway, I've been talking to Mayor Steinberg. I don't know if you guys read the Times on this stuff, but Steinberg came out with an interesting idea in Sacramento. So I used to work with him when he was in the Senate. And we may be launching a bigger campaign around this to say, like, we'll guarantee you're going to get your mental health services, right? We'll promise you that you're actually going to get to addiction treatment or get you a bed with board and care. But if we have all those resources, right, not just a shelter bed, like a little bit more than that, right? Wrap around, but short of like building you $100 million permanent supportive housing complex, right? Something a little more achievable, then we're going to have to compel you into care in some way that you don't hurt yourself. And so we're going to we've tried this bill 3 or 4 different ways over the past few years, and it's always run into issues. It's been killed in the judiciary committees by good friends of mine and colleagues, but the ACLU had huge issues, and so we got hammered. But I'm trying to slice it a new way to maybe try to get something bigger statewide. But the fact is, the county can do a bunch on their own right now.
Do you have legislation that you're proposing? Yeah.
Marty, I wanted to ask the senator.
Go ahead.
If the ACLU is raising all of these objections, why hasn't the legislature asked the ACLU, okay, guys, what's your solution? There's a problem here. You keep saying no. Let's hear what you'll say yes to. So far, nobody seems to have broached that with ACLU.
No, exactly. And that's a very honest way to negotiate. And it actually is what we did last year. So we decided, rather than try to push this bill through again, take a pause. So we have the bill in the Senate. It's sitting there with Eggman, who's from up north. She runs the health committee and oversees all the budget for this. And she's actually really, really good. Former social worker, creative person. So Eggman and I have had this bill. We said, okay, ACLU and all the behavioral health people and all the civil rights people, what is it you want? And they said, well, we want resources. We want to make sure that there's treatment, and that these people, you're not just going to sweep them out of your community to another and sort of not deal with the problem. You have to show us that you're going to have the capacity to deal with it. So last year's budget did that. It put $4.3 billion into behavioral health. The biggest budget ever for behavioral health was like 1.8. We basically quadrupled the greatest budget they've ever had, with a bunch of strings attached. But now we're saying, okay, so we did our part, right? To your point, here's the resources. Let's get more licensed board and care facilities. Let's get psychiatrists out in the field. Let's get public health nurses out in the field. Let's go do street medicine. Let's go be able to administer a prescription, for instance, on the street and not have to go to a hospital. So we got a bunch of that in. And so that's good faith, I think, on our part. So here it is, without raising taxpayer dollars, by the way. And now we're going to come back and say, now that you have the resources there, not just a bed, but more, you've got to have a right to live safely in the community. Taking it from a rights-based approach. I mean, that's, as you see us roll this out soon, that's the rhetoric you're going to hear, is like, this is about rights, but it's the right not to die. Like, the freedom to die on the street is not a freedom. So we're going to try to speak their language and not go offend everybody, but like come right back to them. And I don't know how it'll go.
Is
I'm
there
trying
a
to get
bill
the
number on
governor
that?
on board with it.
Is there a bill number on that, Henry?
508 is the vehicle right now, but we may introduce a whole new one. You'll see the nugget of the idea in 508, but I think it's going to be bigger, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to get the gov to embrace it right out the gates in his budget, and he talked about it in his State of the State before everything went to hell. Like a couple of years back, he talked about some of these reforms. So we've been talking. I have a good relationship, so we'll see if I can make some headway. I will say though, John, to your point, it's been frustrating to say the least. But yeah, some wins out there. Look, some wins. We got LA County fire, some more funding. I'm trying to get a refund, not a defund to public safety. So go back through it and figure out what all the gaps are. And, I think we're starting to get some more funding there for training and for officer recruitment. It's a mess on public safety. We had some other good wins. We got actually some mental health care for first responders, which was really, really good to get post-traumatic stress injuries treated for all of them. They weren't covered before, and the trauma that those guys go through every day doing those jobs, getting shot at or worse, So some wins, but I'm frustrated. Sacramento's not I'm getting my end of my patience with it. I feel sometimes like I fail you guys when I can't pull these things off, and there's so much unfinished business, and I just feel like there's an unlistened to majority in this town and all over the state that's got to roar now. You guys got to come back and get us back on track.
It sounds like it wasn't what you expected before you went up there. When you got up there, it turned out to go, this is the dish I thought was going to be served to me.
Well, I didn't go in totally green. Like I'd been general counsel and like written a bunch of bills, but yeah, this stuff's hard. Look, this stuff is hard. And I'm not trying to say these are easy problems to solve. And it's not all just like Sacramento's fault. I'm not trying to like throw my whole institution under the bus here. There's plenty of exogenous factors, poverty and, real estate values and all these other things. But we look, legislators, politicians in general, we tend to follow the pack, right? We kind of chase each other. And so there's sort of a trend. And I think as Democrats, especially, we got to find a new path for ourselves that doesn't feel apologetic about standing up on public safety, or you're not embarrassed to be like, to reject the NIMBY argument, but to still be, unapologetically, progressive. So I don't know. We'll see.
It sounds like you're working on trying to solve almost all of them together. Like, for example, in drug rehab, that's not a separate issue. Housing, it's not a separate issue.
Exactly.
You're trying to find some way to combine them all in. It almost seems like you're taking on too much at the same time to try to get people to follow along in that area. But by the same token, it's not one problem. It's a multiple layer problem.
Well, that's it. Like one person contains all those problems. So the bureaucracy has to behave like the people it's trying to serve, right? So, it sounds really complicated when I talk about it, but like the fact that Department of Public Health, the Behavioral Health Department, the Mental Health Department, and then LASA, you have 4 different agencies to go navigate for one person, and then maybe add in public safety and law enforcement on top of that. Like all this work is siloed right now. And so what we really want to do is just break that stuff down and not have the substance use treatment over with the people doing vaccine mandates and working on public health all the time. Like unify that with mental health, because we know that those two issues are intimately related. And if we can get you mental health care, we can probably help get you at least step down from whatever your drug issues are. And then the housing can't be separate from that. It's not like, here's the keys to your new home, and by the way, good luck with the methamphetamines. Like that's not going to work. We're going to waste money that way. So I want an integrated, in my fantasy, it's centralizing this bureaucracy and having serious accountability and not all this.
Yeah, I think most of us have to agree with you that it seems to be myopic. They look at one thing. I know we're having some problems over here with some of the tiny homes where the people have put in that, but at nighttime they come in there, but during the daytime they go outside and do their drugs and do their other stuff outside, and they come home to sleep, so to speak. But there's not that coordination. It almost seems like we need to have kind of a SWAT team RV approach to it, where there's like a team of 5 or 6 people that are in
That's it.
and that mobile unit
Multidisciplinary
goes out.
teams. There's a really cool pilot to check out. It's very small. It's like only 30 people working on in the whole county. It's called the Home Team. But they're not in the valley. We're trying to get them out here. That's what Supervisor Barger and I have been working on. We went down to Skid Row and watched them in action. But this is like, it's not like no law enforcement allowed, or the psychiatrist has to be in a separate place from the housing advisor. Like, put them all together and figure out the best fit for that person. And by the way, show up on time. Because if you guys go on, I don't know who's pitched you on the Hop LA app, right? Like, you can say you got someone on your street, go onto the Hop LA app and pop in some info, like sort of like 211. Has anybody used that on here? Have you guys seen that Hop LA?
I have not, and I'll take a look at it to see. That's a new one.
It's supposed to be like a way without, you don't have to call 911, right? In theory, you're supposed to be able to call the county or, whatever, boop the county on your app and say, we've got an incident here with somebody who looks like they need help. And it doesn't look like a criminal situation necessarily, but it looks like somebody who needs pretty immediate assistance. Now, your guaranteed turnaround time is 3 to 4 days. How long do you think that person's going to last?
Not going to happen. It needs 30 minutes. Would probably be a lot.
That's it.
But it seems like if these guys were in some type of remote vehicle of some sort, like a big RV, if you will, to where they had almost their own little offices inside of that, they show up at a location that they get called to, or that they have a certain day of the week that they're going to show up at one of the sites where people are encamped at and work them. And all of them are there. Yep. They all work together. They all know each other. Then they know what the disciplines are. They know what each can do. It seems like we might get along a lot better. Something the state can do to try to help with that, to force that going on, or are we back to trying to get the county to do it?
Well, I mean, it's going to take both, and we'll see what this Blue Ribbon Commission comes up with. And I'm really hoping this County Blue Ribbon Commission been talking to some of the leaders there, and so they'll have to change. But we can probably make them change with this budget if we push the right way. I think money talks. So
now that you mentioned
I'm planning to make that a big issue.
Now that you mentioned the Blue Ribbon Commission, what do you think about them? What do you expect to have coming out of them?
I don't know. I hope they're brave. Hope they want to be bold.
I mean, most commissions we have, unfortunately, on it, Senator, they do stuff, and they'll hire some consultants to come in at $200,000 or whatever. They'll do a 300-page report that nobody ever reads with a executive summary that says we need to do more work on this. That seems to be the standard. You almost rubber stamp those. We need some people who've got some guts to be able to do stuff and step out and say, listen, we got problems. And we have to get some solutions. And heck, even if we're going to get sued over this stuff, let them sue us. We got to find out what's going to work and what's not going to work. We're running into problems right now with Judge Carter has basically, I think, stripped the city of being able to do anything. They're afraid of what's going to go on, as opposed to saying, listen, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, sue us. And if Judge Carter wants to come down with an order of something, let's take it up on appeal and see what happens with it, because we just don't know at this stage. I think that some of the old rules have changed and need to change, because the environment is not the same as what it was a long time ago when some of these rules came in. So from the states, was that Marty? You got a question? Go ahead. I see you.
I just wanted to ask the senator.
Yeah.
It seems like all of these are short-term answers. Ever since Reagan closed, when he was governor, closed all the mental institutions in this state, we've run into the same problem, and nobody's made any move to restructure that and to bring them back. You treat these people, and then they put them back on the street. And what do they expect to happen? And then even if until they kill somebody, they're going to be returned to the street. It's just foolhardy. And yet I don't hear anybody in Sacramento, and I don't hear the governor, and I don't hear anybody standing up and saying, guys, we got to start reinstituting the places where we can send these people, that they aren't a menace to our neighborhoods, and where they don't keep coming back every 20 minutes and creating an ongoing problem. It's just, you'd think we'd learned, but we haven't. And I'm curious as to why nobody in the state legislature has move forward with it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I would say the biggest impediment has been the sort of impasse over how it's like how congregated do you want that care, right? Like bringing back the state hospital model is gonna. I frankly think in certain acute cases, it's really, really important to have that and to not have us going into our other sort of general community hospitals, which is, those are the people, by the way, dealing with homelessness. If it's not law enforcement in their jails, right? It's either jails doing the service or hospitals doing it. And our audit showed that it's unbelievably expensive to do it either way. But licensed board and care, to me, is going to be, that's where rubber's going to meet the road. And I'm not talking about, like, I've been fighting with the unlicensed substance use treatment and rehab places. So I have a huge concerns about an unregulated industry, but I'm talking about, getting the right sites and locations and picking places that are going to be safe. And it might not be exactly where you can't. Like, I hate to put it that way, but like, you might not get to live if you picked Venice or you picked Tarzana or where to live. Like, you might end up in Lancaster. And that's, and like, we have amazing facilities. There's actually military bases. There's other opportunities. But I'll tell you, Martin, like, it's not seen those kinds of solutions. I think people are just fundamentally uncomfortable with the realities of administering those places. But I think at county, like the guy who runs Department of Mental Health, this guy, Dr. Sharon, he's worth looking up. He's trying to find a compassionate way so we don't go back to Nurse Ratched and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? We're talking about modern, very restorative places. But the best one I got right now that's a little hopeful for me is that, check it out, the USC Restorative Village. They built it on county property and they got it done in like 180 days, which was killer because they used a bunch of prefab. But like, let's do more of those. I don't know. I get the bridge housing is the big, that's like the most, that's the popular one for progressives, and it's permanent supportive housing first and everything else next. But I think we got to look at it more as a mental health care issue and less as a housing issue.
Well,
so I think you're right.
In your district too, you've had a lot with the rehab centers coming in where people.
Oh boy, yeah, you guys got some issues in your community. It's all over Agoura, Calabasas, Malibu.
We've got to have some regulation on that. You're in the best place to be able to probably do that. With if nothing else, have them registered. Have them have the doctors that we know which doctors are at the location, how many people they have in there, where the physical locations are to them, because they're all over in our communities now at this point. And if nothing else, maybe in the legislation, we need to be able to find some place of saying, listen, they don't belong in our residential communities because of the potential problems they have with the impact on those communities, and need to be in some other areas that might be more likely to accommodate them in some basic way. Are you able to work on some of that legislation, or have you? And what's the feeling in the legislature on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've got a couple of my Republican colleagues have been my best partners on that over the last few years. Although Senator Hill from up north, he retired, but we passed a few bills. I think we're gonna be cracking down on some of the unlicensed stuff through unlikely means, so not necessarily what you're talking about as zoning issues, but more on like insurance fraud. And there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that that's been going on after their insurance goes out on the people, they dump them out on the street. Now we got a problem with them on the street.
Exactly.
They need to have, if they're going to bring somebody on insurance, they have to be able to provide some type of, either it's whether they're able to go back in the community or they're going to find some place they're going to put them.
Exactly. And what's the handoff look like? Yeah. You don't get to just get a taxpayer subsidy from Medi-Cal and then wipe your hands clean and not deal with the issue. So like, there's a lot of fly-by-night work, but we also need to embrace the really good guys, right? Like, I think that's the corollary for us. Like, let's find really good operators who are doing a very good job at it and license the system and get it all registered and above board. So it's not like just people buying random houses in your neighborhood and suddenly pretending like they're going to, deal with people's drug addiction issues. And anyway, there's a lot of predation that goes on there that's very unfortunate, but we got a package coming out on a sort of substance use disorder treatment reform that we're going to be introducing in January with a woman named Berner Horvath and Petrie Norris from Orange County, and me and a couple Northerners. So we'll see. I would just say, like, we got to find some solutions on the drug treatment side that work. I don't think it's necessarily going to be about just letting the free market kind of run that one. I think we're going to have to be a little more hands-on.
Well, I think it sounds good that you're going to let's come up with some good guys first, and then once you got the good guys there, you get rid of the bad guys because
Exactly.
you put them over the good guy stuff.
Exactly.
That I think can work really well.
We'll see. It's a registry, John. That's what part of what it's going to be, is like a good guy registry, and that you kind of voluntarily opt in initially, but then we're going to give different benefits to those who do opt into that framework, and then those who don't. It's really tricky because you get into like Fair Housing Act stuff. And as soon as you start to limit, like when you start imposing certain limitations, you're going to get sued right away, or you're going to get beat up in judiciary committee. So anyway.
So you want to attract them with a nice carrot, if you will. At this
That's
point.
it. A little bit of lawyering. I see Shelley's got her hand up.
Yeah, Shelley, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a speaker, Senator, one time that's saying that the state of California could apply for an exemption to the federal government to get reimbursement for mental health and drug facilities that are larger than 16 beds, but that the lobbyists have fought consistently against allowing the state to apply for that exemption. And if that's true, that exemption would make a world of difference for exactly the situations that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's I don't know what you're referring to, but that sounds really intriguing. Will you give me some more on that, please?
Yeah, it was Susan Shelley who discussed that.
Oh, is she smart? Yeah. She's smart. I know Susan.
She said there's an exemption that the state could apply for to the federal government to get reimbursements to allow more than 16 bed facilities for drug.
In other words, to do more congregated care than we're current, like that's our sort of cap right now. In other words, 16 or under.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, to me, if you build that village kind of space and you find the right place that's in a safe place, it's going to be a little better off than like 2 or 3 people in the hinterlands, or, these sort of small in some cases, a neighborhood thing could work, but I think you need a lot of resources. Like you don't just, you've got to have 24-hour care for these places. And that to me is, anyway, I'll check that out, or have my staff do a little digging on that. Or if you got any more, we'll track Susan down, but that sounds like a good little lobbying mission for us. Go see if our federal reps will help.
Yeah, if it's true, and she said that it's being fought because of the very strong lobbying done by these organizations that are making fortunes out of these small 16-bed rehab centers.
Yeah, well, that is true too. They probably don't want to change their business model, right?
Okay.
Interesting.
I'll get into it. I want to do that homework, because I've been trying to get super creative with a lot of these communities and helping their lawyers think about it. And anyway, it's tricky stuff, but I'll check that one out.
Well, all of this stuff seems to be just going to the quality of life for all of us. It's having a dramatic effect, and I think that almost every family is being touched by this in some fashion, with some members someplace along the line that have run into some difficulties, and there's just no way of being able to handle it. And you try to look to the assistance from outside, and it really isn't anything. Certainly nothing that looks like it's workable. So it sounds like we got some interesting things coming up next year, and stay tuned is the bottom line. Stay tuned. Huh?
Indeed. And and I'm still trying to figure out what map we'll even be in our community. There's all this redistricting going on. So I hope I get to keep representing Woodland Hills in the Senate. I may get pushed into a situation though where I've got to go find another venue. So we'll see what happens, but keep yourselves abreast of December 15th, when a lot of those maps shake out, because
I know they're having some hearings. They're having some hearings.
Yeah,
on that
some hearings this
even.
week, and my whole thing has just been trying to make sure the Valley stays together, and they want to keep sticking us with the West Side. I frankly think we got a lot more in common with the rest of the San Fernando Valley than we do Santa Monica, but we'll see where all that goes. But I'm keeping a close eye on it, and I'm frustrated enough with how my local government's going. I may actually end up having to go run for a local seat in the near future too.
All right,
So
well,
we'll keep you posted on all
we
that.
won't talk about that tonight, but let's go to another one that does have the effect upon your district. You've done a lot of work over fire prevention and preparedness at this point. Where do we stand with that? I did some work with some clients out on the Woolsey fire. It was devastating out there to people. There are still some people who have not been able to rebuild their homes because they can't get permits and stuff going on. Where are we with your office and with the state, having worked on trying to help with that situation and doing some more with fire preventiveness and preparation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm spooked today. Even I know we just got through this wind event. How many folks lost power? I'm just curious. Did I know I didn't get a ton of calls out of Woodland Hills. I don't think you guys had it.
Yeah, because DWP doesn't drop us off. It only comes out of.
They dropped Tarzana off in Encino, which I hadn't seen them do before. But
oh yeah, well I'm not aware of that. We didn't have anything I know of in Woodland Hills that we
nothing.
dropped off.
Yeah, but
So,
well, all I'll say about that is, I don't think we should be building a bunch more housing into these fire zones. Obviously, if you've got your house burned down, we want to get you, back on your feet. I'm not trying to get rid of everyone who got hit by the fires. I want to hold on to the community, but beyond that, that's been our big push is stop building deeper and deeper into the fire zones, find other places to do housing. And that's what to me was so crazy about all those housing bills was like, you want a fourplex out up a deep canyon that has no parking and you think you're going to be able to evacuate. And I don't know where that's going to be. My sister lives up at, one of these narrow streets in Woodland Hills. And she got 2 little kids and it's like, all right, everyone goes in ADUs or split lots their whole place. And you've got double the capacity on that street. And then you got to get out fast. I've been through plenty of my own personal trauma with those fires in Woolsey, with my family, and it's always on my mind. So I'm running this public safety emergency management committee, and we're trying to hire more firefighters, frankly, have more hand crews and more people out there. So we want to get more, not less, into the ranks, but also try to get homeowners a way to hold on to their insurance. So that's the big. Folks getting cancellations or non-renewals. I hear more about it for like Santa Clarita, Thousand Oaks, Malibu, but has that been an issue amongst your
not directly amongst our members, but I know certainly from those that are out in that area, because I have friends that are out there too, that some of them are having their insurance canceled out, and the state may need to come in and do some subsidies, require the insurance companies to put together a pool for those people.
That's it. My main thing is make sure the insurance companies are rewarding people who are doing a good job. If you don't do a good job, I don't know how to tell people to subsidize that. But if you're doing all your defensible space and so is your neighbor and your neighbor's neighbor, and your community says, hey, we got certified as FireWise community, or we got a neighborhood watch for fire watch, or we have arson watch, and you tick some boxes, well, then come back in with your insurance product. If they don't do it, can't tell them to insure against something that's too much risk. But I think people are stepping up. And so that's the negotiation going on right now on the fire side of things is, limit the growth, but also try to harden.
Are you talking about putting a moratorium on anything in the future to be built? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, well, that's my bill. My bill's sitting there. It ran into Wiener's committee though, so
okay.
I didn't get a hearing, or I got a hearing, but no vote on that one. I'm going to bring it back again though. That's SB 55, but I'm not optimistic. I just like to see county or city adopt ordinances on that front and beat us to the punch here in LA. Look at all the very high fire zones and stop trying to build more ADUs and fourplexes and everything. It's crazy to me. So anyway, we'll see. I'm pushing at the local level and the state level at this point.
Bobby, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. So I live by Sarania and Dumetz, and
yeah, of course.
Private
My sister lives
insurer.
right up the street from you.
There you go. Excellent. So if she were to sell her house, the new owner wouldn't be able to get insurance. They would have to, because this area has been reclassified from a 2 to a 4, or a 4 from a 2. Anyway, it's now a high fire danger. And so
you're high, you're not very high.
Yeah, but we're not very, we're in the middle of a neighborhood. It's not like we're in the middle of of Topanga. But, if there's a lot of insurers here that have just been able to cancel. I'm lucky I was grandfathered in, But if I had a different insurance company, I probably would have to get the state insurance, which, you know, quite frankly, is very expensive and not
so
that
many
great.
people got left behind on that. Those plans are very
Is there
limited.
is there a way to fix that?
Yeah, so we're trying with the insurance commissioner he just put out new regulations a little while ago and said that, you know, you set up these incentives and you say if that new homeowner comes in and has sort of ticked off these sort of fire safety boxes, you've got to at least offer a discount or some affordable plan at that rate. We're not going to say exactly what the rate is, but you got to offer coverage. The hardest part is they don't want to do it home by home, because what they say, and they're not totally wrong in this argument. If you fix you get rid of that bougainvillea on the side of your house, or you get the pavers instead of, or you make sure your gutters are screened, or all those little things we can do. But then your neighbor doesn't, and then the ember slips into their
That's
vent,
right. Yeah.
and then it burns your house. It's still going to burn your neighborhood down, right? That's what happened in Woolsey. Was like these embers went 100 miles an hour over the freeway and just sucked into people's furnaces, and they're like bombs going off. So the hardest part is getting communities, and I think homeowners associations are going to be a really important part of the puzzle collectively to certify that, like, we as a community go through X, Y, and Z steps, and drawing those little circles. I'm not saying like big circles like whole cities, but again, your level of governance, the insurance commissioner is ready to push. So we're trying to, we had a bill, the insurance lobby is pretty powerful. So we're trying to work it through him right now. And he should have a new set of regs that like are getting proposed, and it'll be a big dust up. Keep your eye on the papers. Some of it may play out without the legislature, but we're trying to kind of help him. But yeah, give some fire safety discounts, but it's got to be these fire wise communities, or through a fire safe council, or there's going to be important community level work that has to happen, I think, to pull that new paradigm off so that people can keep moving in. And I'm mostly worried about also people getting priced out. Like, I don't want people on fixed incomes where they're getting non-renewals and then suddenly they can't make the payments, or it starts to get scary. I mean, I know a lot of people then they're going to leave, and then find, get some rich person who flows in, but like, what happens to the middle class in our communities? I just, that's what scares me.
Why,
Thank you.
A question.
Why not, why not consider something like the earthquake approach?
I mean, Bobby was sort of referring to that. There is a statewide fire insurance plan. It's just like super expensive and not comprehensive. And look, the insurance, here's what I would say about the earthquake insurance thing. It looks flush right now and they're in a really good spot, but that's because we haven't had one.
And can I say something? The state insurance is about double of the private insurance, and my insurance has doubled since I've moved in this house.
You want, which one are you on?
I'm in State Farm.
You're
So they
State Farm's still covering out there. That's a big, but your legacy, like you said.
I'm legacy, yeah.
Yeah, and you can usually negotiate something, but it's darn near impossible unless you go to one of these big private guys like Lloyd's of London, or one of these premium ones that have their own fire departments and whatnot. But I don't think, for whatever's left of the middle class in our valley, I don't think people are kind of at the Kardashian level of fire insurance. But yeah, Martin, I think, look, the earthquake insurance is it's very much solvent right now, but I know it's going to, I don't want to get too grim here talking about earthquakes in the future, but we're still going to be short significantly.
Well, I do have a question for you on what you're doing about additional forces and funding for more water dropping airplanes. I'd heard the stories out there from people who stayed during the fire. This is along the Mulholland area, and that they watched the airplanes come through, and they never dropped any Phos-Chek any place through that area. There was fire trucks running back and forth, but nobody stopped with any of the flames there. They were all going to other places, and almost seemed like, well, we'll just let it burn. We know we're going to lose houses this area.
Are you saying during Woolsey?
There's during Woolsey, absolutely.
I mean, don't even get me started. I don't know. There's so many strategic.
I mean, I walked out
Errors.
literally 2 days after the fire up there at Mulholland and Laurel Canyon. I'm sorry, and Canaan. And there was you could see no Phos-Chek any place on any of the hills around in that area that ever got dropped. And that the fire just roared through that entire area.
Yeah,
So
and they couldn't, and then they
shocked by
weren't and then the helicopters, which is really what you need. You need the Firehawks to take it on in those wind events that can fly at night, right? So we got totally, outgunned in those evening spreads. There were some really late night pushes that the fire made, and we didn't have the air support we need. So we got one new Firehawk down to LA County last year. They're not cheap. These are like military grade airplanes that can fly, 250 miles an hour and like be at a fire in 9 minutes.
Well, it seems to me that the state should have a whole fleet of these, because you got fires that are up north too and all over the place. You should have a whole fleet and just go use them where you need to.
Yeah, Mike McGuire, who's the North Coast guy, and he went through Paradise, and I are really close. And we're going to be coming out with basically a minimum resources threshold for firefighting in the state. And it's going to be about air support. It's going to be about hand crews. It's going to be about personnel, and try to make a big push this year and get some more Firehawks down here. And some of the new planes are pretty exciting too, but it can't look, I don't think we're going to firefight our way only through this thing. Like we've got to have double the capacity, in my view, on the firefighting. But then we're getting short shrift on the money for fire prevention. 95% of that's going to places where there are big trees right now, right? Everyone's worried about the sequoias, but we're not getting that for our homes. So I'm fighting for that money too, and we'll see if it comes down. But LA's like a different fire animal than it is up north. Do you know what I mean? You think about our hills. I mean, even your background photo, right? You think about the Woodland Hills. It's chaparral. It's not about how big the trees are. It's about the speed of the wind. It's about the grasses. It's about embers. So, been trying to educate the Northerners about how we live down here. We'll see. I got a good line item in the budget last year to say remedy the inequity. So hopefully we'll see some good stuff happening.
It still seems like if you had your own Air Force, if you will, you can move it around the state wherever it needs to, would be probably helpful.
Look, I don't know if you follow the Bravo 69 operation at all. That's amazing. Those pumpkins up in Topanga Canyon save us so many times. And we just expanded that. And I'm trying to get them, just pre-position them in the right spots, because it's really about speed. Like you can see the big C-130s, yeah. But if you have a Firehawk that can get to a fire in 9 minutes, Palisades doesn't happen, right? Like LAFD went to get their water drops at Lake Encino, took them 45 minutes round trip. By the time you're back, you've got like 1 acre became 100. So it's about speed, and we stopped some serious fires that could have hurt us very badly all through these hills in Calabasas area that could have bled into Topanga, all because of that one strategic water spot in Topanga right at the top there. And so I just want those water drop spots. Like you got to kind of dot the Air Force. Like I love the Fire Force idea, and I might steal that from you, but you got to pre-position it in the right spots, right? You got to kind of because you need fast.
Well, but they do. Listen, the fire departments do that. We drive by anytime that there's these winds that come up. We'll go by a fire station that normally only has 2 fire engines on it. They got 8 of them sitting there waiting because they know that's a good staging location. So these guys figured out pretty good as time goes where they need to put this stuff out at a particular point in time, depending upon the winds and what have you. And I know even with after Wolseley, Southern Cal Edison has got monitors now on the winds and what's coming up, and they know what they're supposed to be shutting down in places. They never had that before. Question for that I saw showing up. I'm going to do a little bit of modification. It has to do with sort of the funding that has to do with police and the defunding the police. Where do you stand on the defunding issues for the police and the state taking some actions to either help that or to prevent that or to make it more palatable or to make sure that we still have got safety? Where do you stand on all that?
I do not support that movement. I think it's a foolish errand. I'm for refunding and reforming. And I think, we've got to make police department and the sheriff's department a place that good people want to show up and go to work. And it's a really hard job to do with very, very high stakes and definitely mistakes being made and definitely training gaps and I mean, all kinds of problems. Not trying to say it's not a perfect system, but I don't think we're going to replace, you can't send social workers out to deal with street racers, right? Like there are things that social workers are going to be able to do. And we talked about some of them earlier on mental health issues and taking some of that off of law enforcement. But there's some things that law enforcement has to do, and you really, really want them to do when you pick up the phone and call 911. And I've heard too many stories, people picking up that phone when they need them and they can't be there. And I'm really hoping the mayor, goes with the police commission's recommendation on bumping that budget back up at LAPD. I'm hoping that I don't have a lot of faith in what's going to happen at county at this point because it's such a mess between the sheriff and the board. Like, there's no way to disentangle that mess right now, and
they're fighting,
caught in the middle, and it's an awful situation where politics just sort of infects something that's very sacred stuff, right? Like, you don't want to be, oh, if you were with me politically, then we're going to serve you on this, some crime that happened in your neighborhood. But if you didn't, it's scary stuff when all that starts to get in play. And so I just want things to calm down.
Well,
like, I don't think we need a full revolution in this space. I think we need serious reform, and we passed some last year, right? And there was a big debate about it all. And now you can decertify a cop if they've been guilty of a serious crime. And that's good. We did that.
Let's talk for a moment about 47, for example, with the smash and grabs are going on now with this misdemeanors if it's under $950, and they're not going to get. Listen, my recollection from law school, which was a long time ago, that when you see 9 or 10 people working together, that's a conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor is a felony, and you can put people in jail for that conspiracy alone, even though the underlying cause is just going to be a misdemeanor. How about doing something up there legislatively to say, listen, you're gonna come in as one person, you're stealing something. All right, we're gonna take a look at that differently than what we are. We have 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 20 cars that are showing up outside. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
That's a conspiracy issue that goes on. Those should be felonies, and those should be under arrest right away, and not subject to the old Prop 47 stuff where you're going to get out with just a ticket.
I agree, and I think I would love to be able to do it without a bill. Be great to just see the AG, try to extend that legal argument, because I don't actually read Prop 47 as barring that argument you just made. I think it's allowed under current law, but I don't think that the DAs have really pushed it that way. But I'll tell you, we tried to do Prop 47 reform a couple times on things like gun theft, and it's been miserable. So
you have a bully pulpit though that you can use as well to get out in front of these stuff, and to put the cameras up and you in front of Nordstrom's going, hey, listen, the city attorney and the district attorneys need to be prosecuting these guys as felons because this is a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy to commit crimes, and that's different than what Prop 47 was intended to take care of.
That's smart. I'll do a little more homework. I think that's a wise idea. Maybe we get a little momentum there, and if you don't have to deal with the legislature and just these DAs and city attorneys step up, all the better. But I know the governor is very aware of it and wants to do something. So I'm going to reach out to his folks and see if they got any ideas, because it's not even just the smash and grabs. Poor murder in Beverly Hills. Talking about home invasion. I mean, this stuff is. These are serious issues, and people don't feel safe in LA right now, and we got to do something about it.
Gotcha.
And it's going to have to be a bigger political change, and I hope it shows up in the mayor's race, and I hope people kind of reclaim our politics in that way. It's got to show up in every facet of our politics, and it's got to be Democrats saying it too, right? This can't be like a Republican versus Democrat thing. We got to find some other space in our politics to do this. And by the way, same issue with all the fentanyl, right? I mean, to be able to get around serious criminal prosecution for killing our kids with these, fake opioids and all the other. I mean, I've friends and family I've lost from all this stuff, and there's a DA down south who's actually starting to prosecute some of those cases creatively, that I'm really supportive of that effort. But I don't know. I think you're right. Bully pulpit's probably smart because to reform one of those ballot initiatives and then go through the whole big state fight is such a bear.
Listen, I think if the public knew that there was some way that they could be going after these people rather than hearing them say, listen, you can't touch them.
Let me
because it's
sharpen
just
my
a
pencil on
misdemeanor.
that. I'm gonna do a little homework.
Another story.
I'll take your lead on that. That's a very good note.
Let's move to Santa Susana. What can you tell us about the field lab up there? What's going on with that? Have you got any inside information on that? What's happening with Santa Susana?
There's supposed to be some negotiation or something going on where the state is trying to figure out how to settle this cleanup once and for all with Boeing. They got a certain piece of that on track with DOE that was supposed to be a smooth kind of start to dismantle some of the older, the most toxic sites up there and start to deal with some of those issues. But then they just like blew up the whole facility rather than take it apart piece by piece. And so everybody freaked out when that happened because that didn't feel like very attentive to the neighborhood. And so I think we've got a good window here to try to land something. Some of my ideas about all that are a little outside the box where I don't really want to see us truck trip off all the toxic soil. I think we can find smarter systems. So I've been trying to bring some new companies in to put them in front of the EPA and say, you can do conveyor systems. There's really like quick, like not permanent infrastructure, but to get slurry out of there, contained systems. There's even like a kind of an air-based, if you picture like a gondola, but contained. They've been doing some innovative work there. So I'd like to see them be able to do this cleanup without an insane amount of truck trips, but I also think they got to get going because people are hurting, and it's been about time.
Put in the back of your mind something that I came across, which had to do with the Agent Orange issue back in Vietnam. As you know, that polluted the grounds that were there, and part of Saigon, where they were filling up the airplanes with the Agent Orange, it was spilling out onto the ground, and so the airport there was totally contaminated. Well, what they did was they came in and they put heating units in and heated up the ground with a covering over the top of it, and it caused all the stuff to turn to fumes, and they collected the fumes out of that, extracted the fumes out, and so there was nothing left in the ground. There may be something along those lines.
You're right. You're a wise guy. I don't mean a wise guy.
Talk to my wife about that one.
But it's called in situ treatment, and the idea is if you can max out your treatment of those substances on site. Yeah. That's no truck trip.
Exactly.
And then whatever else you got to do it very carefully and very uninvasively. So, there's a big documentary that just came out and a lot of pressure on will soon be the governor and Cal EPA to get sorted. So I'm just trying to be the voice for the community in this whole thing and try to get us a settlement that's going to make people feel safe again, but also, don't do it in such a disruptive way that, you just, you can't move forward out there. So
you've been generous with your time with us this evening, but I think there's probably one other thing we need to take a look at.
Good.
Are you going to be endorsing some candidates for city council or for the mayor? And have you decided to do so yet?
No mayor yet. I endorsed in the Corrette seat, although, there's a few good candidates. I endorsed Katie Yaroslavsky in that seat, but Sam Yebry's a friend as well. So there's some good options in that race. I'm trying to think what other places I've intervened politically. There's going to be the maps are so hard to judge. Like no one really knows what seat they're exactly running for at this point until this year's over. So it's a strange game of politician musical chairs, but I will tell you the anxiety it brings is probably healthy for my crew of folks because it'll keep us all humble. We got to realize that we're expendable, and so anyway, I'm kind of waiting for the dust to settle there.
After all this time that you've spent now in the Senate, the work you've done, and now endorsing candidates or thinking about that, how productive do you think really the government is? If we have our city council members, we have the state legislature. In some other states, for example, the state legislature, they only meet 4 months out of the year, and they go back home and do their own work, and they have their own jobs. And same with their city councils. Here we have a city council that's paid a fortune, and they can't have any other jobs. And so they almost start looking for work to do, and busy work sometimes, and, start messing up the stuff rather than trying to fix things. That's what some of the other states are. Take a look at Texas, for example.
Right.
So what's your feelings about that? Are we too big and over bloated in everything that we're doing to where we can't get stuff accomplished?
I do. I think certainly in LA, we do have that challenge. I think we're so big. I think the county is so huge. I mean, it's bigger than most nations, and it's an unwieldy kind of governance. In terms of part-time or full-time legislature, you better really like your governor or your mayor if you're going to do that system. So that's the downside, is like they're going to have a lot of sway. When those other part-time legislatures show up, the governor's budget is the budget. Like there's not really a discussion. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's the worst form of government except for all the others. Isn't that what Churchill said about us? Yep. So I am desperate to restore confidence in the competency of government here in LA. And for such a progressive place, I think even amongst my most liberal Democratic friends who, stumped hard for Biden or even Bernie, right? They still are looking around and saying, this doesn't feel like the highest quality of life I could have for my family. This feels like things aren't really happening like they should be. So regardless of who I vote for president, like I'm not happy with how things are looking back home. And I think they're not wrong. And I'm kind of sick of people, people feeling sheepish about being critical, because I just don't think, I don't know, the last presidential election colored our politics. And so it made it really binary and you got to pick a side. And I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think if we can start to bust through some of the bureaucracy and not look to raise taxes every time, but really sort of get some throughput and get some wonks in there. I mean, the real thing is, do you care about the details? Are you more into the press conferences, or do you care more about just the guts of it all? And we need you guys to force us to be details people and tracking down individual issues. And if you have somebody in front of your home or that you're worried about, like, someone's got to pick up the darn phone. We did 10,000 cases during COVID for EDD, 10,000 in the office, right? I think we had 4,000 small business claims. I mean, and my office, like you guys know Nick a little bit, or Jeremy, there's like 5 or 6 of them for 1 million people. It's not enough, is my point. I think, but not every office does that. Like, I don't think the servant attitude is not really common. And so I think you need that kind of that culture to be demanded in LA, especially if you're paying for it. And then if you are paying for it and they're not doing it, throw us out.
Well, as we go forward into next year and the elections that'll be coming up for next year, I think that's a good way to be approaching who we're going to be supporting and who should be in the office, whether or not they have a servant heart. Do they have truly a servant heart, or they just want to be a politician that likes to be able to go to all the events and to be able to have a title next to their name at that point? So I think that's a good caveat for all of us. Senator, I think if there's any questions from any of the board members, I think otherwise you've been very generous with your time. We're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour at this point. I'd like to thank you seriously for spending the time with us tonight. I know
Yes.
that you, and in spite of the fact that COVID putting everybody at home to where you don't have to go back and forth up to Sacramento all the time. Nonetheless, everybody's pulling at you. They want to talk to you.
No. I work for you. I work for you. I mean, I really do. You do pay your taxes. And I make $109,000 a year for that. And I just had a baby, and we're going to try to live in LA. And I'm very, very grateful for my check. And even if I wasn't getting a check, I'd probably be doing this work. But it shows up every month, and I take that job darn seriously, man. So 9 o'clock's nothing, but I will say having a 11-week-old little baby girl now, I'm more motivated than ever. I got to fix LA because I want to live here,
Congratulations,
so
for sure.
I'm fired up.
It sounds good. Listen, Senator, thank you very much. A reminder, all of those of you that are still online with us, if you haven't joined, please do so. $25 a year. We need your emails as well. We try to make sure that we have good people that's here to talk to you so you can understand what's actually going on in your community. And most importantly, to meet them. A lot of times you have no idea who your representatives are. You go to that into the little room and press that little sticker thing down, and you don't know really who those people are. You kind of look and see, oh, the name sounds good or whatever. You know who the people are before you're voting for them and what they stand for at that point. And Senator, we appreciate you coming forward and let us know what you've been standing for, what you've been doing, and what you plan to do in the future. So we
Right
thank
on.
you so much for that.
I'll
And
be here. You guys call if you need any little thing, and we'll
Thank you.
keep you posted on all our plans for next year, and hopefully
do.
we get you involved and get some good wins on the books. You know, we'll need your help, so we'll
we're
come
here.
back to you. And meanwhile, just be safe out there and be good to each other. You know, it's a weird world.
Listen,
Thank you.
it's all good. Happy holidays.
Happy-
Happy Hanukkah. Happy Merry Christmas to those. And
Thanks.
enjoy. Everybody, please be safe. That's the bottom line to it. And
Amen.
everybody stay healthy and enjoy. And thank you again so much, Senator. We'll say
course.
goodnight to all of you. Thank you again for our board members for the work you've done this past year and for the work we have ahead of us as well. It's going to be interesting. So thank you much. We'll say goodnight to you. And again, thank you all very much and good
Thank you.
holidays.
God bless y'all.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night now.
Thank you.